Now we've gone into some depth about the concept of inflation. Now let's look at the concept of deflation and why that's also bad for the economy. So deflation is when the general prices of the economy are decreasing instead of increasing. And so that's the basic idea of deflation. It is when the prices of goods and services in the economy are decreasing as opposed to increasing. So now this technically should be a good thing, shouldn't it? If the price of a car, say a $50,000 BMW, decreases to $45,000, this is a good thing, isn't it? Wouldn't our purchasing power increase? Wouldn't that mean our living standards or our material living standards also increase? Well, yes, to an extent, but now we'll look at why this is in fact wrong. This is bad for the economy. We're going to talk about why deflation is in fact bad. So let's look at the concept or the situation where, say, a house, instead of appreciating, is going to depreciate from $1 million to $800,000. Now this is a fairly large purchase because not many people earn $1 million a year. Most people earn around the $100,000 range per year, or even maybe even less than that. So they need to save up and they need to take out a mortgage for a house. So when they see the price of a house decreasing from $1 million in, say, 2012 to 2013, where the house is only worth $800,000, do you reckon they're going to buy it now? Well, obviously, I don't think they're going to buy it now. Because since this is such a high purchase, they're going to wait for the possibility that this $800,000 decreases to $600,000 in 2014, because it's not essential that they buy this house at the moment, because they're still living in a fairly cozy home, but they want to move out to a larger home. And this is a decrease of $200,000. It's a fairly large decrease. So what people are going to do is people are going to put off their expenses. So this doesn't mean that, say a coffee, which costs $3.50 to start off with, if that decreases to $3, people are just going to buy it right now. They're not going to wait until next week and see if this coffee would actually decrease to $2.50. They're going to buy this now. So we're not talking about the small purchases in the economy. We're talking about the large purchases. And this is how deflation could affect aggregate demand. Because the house is seen to have decreased from $1 million to $800,000, consumers will wait. So consumers will put off large purchases. And this is a very, very important concept to understand when we're talking about deflation, is that consumers won't buy this house, for example, now at $800,000. They're going to wait until the price decreases to $600,000 in 2014, if it does in fact decrease. And so if you aggregate this throughout the economy, this will decrease consumer expenditure. So we know that aggregate demand is C plus I plus G plus net exports. The consumption in the economy would actually decrease. And now, as we know, similarly, according to inflation, when there is high inflation occurring, consumption would also decrease. Similarly, investment would decrease and exports would decrease. With deflation occurring, consumption would similarly decrease as well, because people are going to put off large purchases. And if this is aggregated throughout the entire economy, then this will result in a very large decrease in consumption. And now, as we know that aggregate supply is determined by aggregate demand in the short run, we're going to see that because aggregate demand here is low, then therefore aggregate supply here would also decrease in the short run. And so what this means is that there's going to be a decrease in output. So let's look at the consequences of what happens here. So there will be a decrease in output. And we know that decreases in output are very bad for the economy. So we know that, let's just redraw this again. So we know that aggregate supply would decrease. When aggregate supply decreases, output or economic activity decreases. And so this produces a cycle, a very vicious and insidious cycle. So when output or economic activity decreases, there is less use for labor, and therefore unemployment, specifically cyclical unemployment, would also increase, and therefore jobs will be cut. And so therefore overall national income would also decrease. And so this means that people have less income, and therefore they have a lower purchasing power due to deflation, due to this concept of deflation. So even though prices are in fact decreasing, it is because we're going to put off purchases. That's why this is bad for the economy, because purchases, or specifically large purchases, are put off. Therefore, economic growth slows. And so we know that material living standards equals to how many goods and services we consume. Because of all these factors right here, because incomes decrease, because unemployment increases, and because economic activity and output decreases in the short run, therefore we have fewer goods and services ready to consume, and therefore our material living standards would deteriorate. And this will trigger a vicious cycle, because when deflation occurs, when our incomes decrease, we're going to be putting off more expenses, and this will result in further decreases in the general price of an economy. And when this occurs, we're going to keep on putting off large purchases, because we're going to wait until the price hits rock bottom, and we don't know when this price will hit rock bottom. So we have prices eventually sort of decreasing in this fashion, and we're waiting for this point here. But because we have asymmetric information, because we don't know what other people are thinking, we're just going to keep on letting this price drop. And because we're going to keep on letting this price drop, there will never actually be this bottom out bit. And when this occurs, everything, output, employment, and incomes would all decrease, resulting in overall lower material living standards. And so now we can see that deflation is actually very bad for the economy. We don't want a decrease in general prices, because we want people to spend, and we want economic activity to be healthy. So we want this to be healthy. And so that's why the government seeks for a goal or an inflation target, let's put it here, target of 2 to 3% CPI. And so that's why they want low inflation, but not zero inflation or deflation to occur. It's because they want to stimulate the economy. They want the economy to keep on moving. And so that's the concept of deflation, of how a decrease in general prices of the economy tend to actually make our material living standards worse off.